We all picture it, don't we? Starting our own business.
Hmm.
The freedom, the passion, that dream of being your own boss. It sounds so liberating.
It really does. But
Yeah.
then you look at the numbers, and, well, they're pretty stark.
Stark is putting it mildly. I mean, over 40% of small businesses in the U.S. fail in their very first year. That's almost half.
And it gets worse.
Yeah.
Of the ones that actually make it through that first year, something like 80%, more than 80%, fail within the next 5.
Yes.
Yeah, it's tough out there.
A landscape littered with dashed hopes, really.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that is precisely why we're doing this deep dive today, looking at a really, I think, foundational book, Michael E. Gerber's The E-Myth Revisited: Why Most Small Businesses Don't Work and What to Do About It.
Right.
Because it doesn't just state the problem, it digs into why. Why do they fail? What are the lessons these owners just aren't learning?
Okay, so with that sobering reality check, our mission here is to unpack what Gerber calls his 3 profound ideas. And these aren't just like theoretical concepts. They're meant to be actionable frameworks, things that can help you, the listener, avoid all that chaos and frustration that traps so many people.
Right, the unmanageability,
Yeah,
the grind that just isn't rewarding.
exactly. We want to explore how you might build something, extraordinarily exciting and personally rewarding.
Sounds like a good plan.
So to get there, we have to start with Gerber's first big concept, the entrepreneurial myth. Now, this isn't quite what you might think initially, like entrepreneurs risking capital. He means something, well, different. He calls it the entrepreneurial seizure. Can you break that down?
Yeah, it's a really interesting term, seizure. It's that sudden impulse, right?
Yeah.
It hits someone who's really good at doing something, a great baker, a great coder, whatever technician, as Gerber calls them.
Okay.
And they think, hey, I'm fantastic at this technical skill, and I'm tired of working for my boss, so I should start my own business doing this thing.
Makes sense on the surface.
It does. But that's the fatal assumption, Gerber points out. They assume that because they know how to do the technical work, they automatically know how to run a business that does that technical work. And those are 2 very, very different skill sets.
And this is where that dream starts to sour, right? The technician's dream turns into what Gerber calls the technician's nightmare.
Exactly. The very business they started to find freedom ends up enslaving them even more intensely than their old job ever did.
The book gives that really vivid example of Sarah, the pie baker. She starts all about pies, purely out of love for baking pies.
Loved it.
But then after 3 years of just relentless work, the irony is she can't stand pies anymore. Can't stand the sight, the smell, nothing.
It's heartbreaking, isn't it? Her
Yeah.
passion, the very thing that defined her skill, just becomes this chore. It sort of trivializes the unique thing she brought to the world.
Yeah, it just drains the joy right out of it.
And Gerber connects this directly to this idea of loss. He says the technician having this entrepreneurial seizure feels a terrible sense of loss. Not just losing their connection to the work they loved, but losing their sense of purpose, maybe even their sense of self.
Wow.
It creates this huge internal conflict, which leads him to ask, if there are actually 3 personalities inside every business owner, not just one, well, can you imagine what kind of mess that makes internally?
Right, 3 personalities all pulling in different directions. That's the next big idea, isn't it? These inherent roles within every business owner.
Exactly. He says they're often at war with each other. First, you've got the entrepreneur.
The visionary.
Yep, the dreamer, the innovator, always looking to the future, asking what if, the big picture person. Think Henry Ford, Ray Kroc, those types.
Okay, then there's the manager.
The managers, the pragmatists, they crave order, systems planning. They want things to run smoothly, predictably. They build the structure.
And finally, the technician.
The technician is the doer. They love the actual hands-on work. They're happiest when they're, baking the pies, writing the code, fixing the thing, getting their hands dirty.
So you've got the dreamer, the planner, and the doer. How does that usually stack up in a typical small business? What's the balance or imbalance?
Well, therein lies the problem. Gerber estimates that in most small businesses, it's something like 10% entrepreneur, maybe 20% manager, and a huge 70% technician.
70% technician. So the doer is basically running the whole show.
Pretty much. And that's the disaster, right? The wrong personality is in charge. The entrepreneur has the vision. The manager wants order, but the technician just wants to do the work. So you get this constant internal tug of war leading straight to chaos.
Okay, understanding those roles really sheds light on the typical business life cycle Gerber describes. It starts, he says, in infancy.
Which is totally the technician's phase.
Right. The business is all about what the owner wants to do when they feel like doing it. No boss. It feels great at first.
Feels like freedom. But that lack of structure, that lack of looking ahead, it basically dooms the business before it even gets going, doesn't it?
Yeah, infancy can't last. So the business gets pushed, maybe grows a bit, and hits adolescence.
And adolescence is usually triggered when the owner gets overwhelmed and thinks, okay, I need help. They hire their first employee.
Like Harry, the 68-year-old bookkeeper example in the book.
Exactly. And for a moment, the owner feels this huge sense of relief. Finally, I can delegate.
But then it goes south. The owner quickly decides they shouldn't have trusted Harry or whoever they hired.
Things aren't done their way, the technician's way.
So the owner becomes this master juggler,
Yeah.
right? Trying to do their job and oversee Harry and probably end up redoing Harry's work.
And the work of anyone else they hire. It's completely overwhelming. They feel like they're losing control again, maybe even more than before.
And this is where that phrase comes in. The boss always changes his mind because the owner keeps shifting priorities, trying to patch holes.
It's pure reaction mode. And this point, when the business is pushed beyond the comfort zone where the owner just can't juggle anymore, Gerber says there are really three ways it can go.
Okay, what are the options?
Well, option one is getting small again. Basically, retreat. Shrink the business back to a size the owner can control, usually back to infancy. Give up growth for control.
Option two.
Going for broke. This is where they just keep growing, pedal to the metal, but without any real systems or control in place. It's fast, chaotic growth that inevitably leads to implosion, crash and burn. He mentions companies like Osborne Computer, Colico.
Wow, big names that went that route.
Yeah. And then there's the third path, the much harder path, maturity.
The path less traveled.
Definitely. This is
Yeah.
where the owner has to fundamentally change, develop a new perspective, and build a business designed to work without them needing to be there doing everything all the time.
This ties back to Sarah the baker again, doesn't it? When she hired Elizabeth, who was actually really talented.
Right. But Sarah couldn't define the role properly, couldn't provide the structure or the system. So Elizabeth, understandably, left.
Leaving Sarah devastated, right back in that technician's trap.
Exactly. It shows trust isn't enough. You need clear systems. Which really begs the question, how do you build a business that runs without enslaving the owner?
Which leads us neatly into the idea of maturity and adopting what Gerber calls the entrepreneurial perspective.
Yes, a mature business isn't just about the owner's skills. It knows exactly what it is, how it operates, what its purpose is. It has a clear vision beyond just the daily work.
And the way to achieve this, Gerber argues, is through the turnkey revolution. This sounds big.
It is a big idea.
Yeah.
It's a specific process he calls the business development process. And the promise is that this process can turn basically any small business into a highly effective organization. It's about building it right from the start, or maybe rebuilding it so it stays vital and doesn't get stuck.
And the prime example he uses to illustrate this.
Yeah.
It's iconic.
It really is. McDonald's.
Right.
Ray Kroc, who wasn't even the founder, he was a salesman, 52 years old. He saw the genius wasn't the hamburger.
It was the system.
Exactly. He saw this perfectly replicable system for delivering a consistent product and experience. He essentially re-engineered McDonald's way before re-engineering was even a buzzword, like Henry Ford did with the Model T.
And the results are just staggering. I mean, a $40 billion a year business, tens of thousands of restaurants, serving millions daily all over the world.
It's incredible. And the core of that success is what Gerber identifies as the business format franchise. It's not just licensing a product, it's licensing the entire way of doing business.
Which explains why franchises generally have a much higher success rate than independent startups.
Precisely. Because the system is proven. The key insight here, Gerber says, is that McDonald's wasn't just selling hamburgers. They were selling the business itself to the franchisee.
Okay, so the product is the business model.
Yes. The true product isn't what you sell, it's how you sell it. McDonald's focused relentlessly on making the business operation work predictably and flawlessly for the person running the franchise. That consistency is everything.
So bringing this back to the listener, the small business owner, what's the big takeaway? It sounds like a fundamental mind shift.
It absolutely is.
Yeah.
It's about starting to think about working on your business, not just in it.
On it, not in it. Okay.
Your business and your life need to be seen as separate things. The business should serve your life, not the other way around.
So how do you do that practically?
Gerber's advice is radical but simple.
Yeah.
Pretend you're going to franchise your business, even if you have no intention of ever actually franchising,
Okay, why?
because it forces you to build it as a perfect replicate, a prototype, a model that could theoretically be copied thousands of times and still work perfectly.
So what does that perfect replicate, that franchise prototype, actually look like? What are its key features?
Gerber lays out 5 key characteristics. First, it has to provide consistent value, not just to customers, but also to employees, suppliers, lenders,
Right.
everyone involved. Predictable value.
Okay, consistent value. What's second?
Second, and this was often counterintuitive,
Hmm.
it must be operable by people with the lowest possible level of skill.
Lowest possible skill. That sounds risky.
It sounds risky, but the point is, the system ensures the quality, not the individual brilliance of the employee. The system makes it work, not relying on finding geniuses for every role.
Ah, okay. The system is the star. What's number 3?
Third, it has to be a place of impeccable order, visibly, operationally.
Hmm.
Just clean, organized, efficient.
Makes sense. Fourth.
Fourth, all the work is documented.
Yeah.
Everything, in detailed operations manuals. Think of it as the ultimate how-to guide for every single task in the business. This ensures consistency no matter who does the job. It makes complex work simple to execute reliably.
Got it. Document everything. And fifth.
Fifth, it provides a uniformly predictable service to the customer every single time. He uses an example of a barber whose service became way more consistent and therefore better after they systematized everything.
Okay, consistent value, low skill operable, impeccable order, documented processes, predictable service. That's the blueprint. How do you actually build that prototype?
Through the business development process, which Gerber breaks down into 3 core ongoing activities. The first is innovation.
Okay, innovation, but not just random brainstorming.
No, not just creativity for its own sake. It's about the structured development and testing of new ways of doing business that improve results.
Can you give an example?
Sure. The book mentions changing a simple customer greeting. Instead of the usual, "May I help you?" No, testing something like, "Hi, have you been in here before?"
And that makes a difference.
Apparently, yes. Gerber claims that specific change could boost sales by 10, even 16% in some cases. It's about finding those small, structured improvements.
Wow. Okay, so innovation first. What second?
Second is absolutely crucial, quantification. You have to measure the impact of every innovation.
Measure everything.
Everything related to how you do business.
Mm.
Customer interactions, sale of conversion rates, production times, whatever is relevant. If you don't quantify the results of an innovation, you have no idea if it actually worked or made things better. You're just guessing.
Right. Data doesn't lie. So innovation, quantification. What's the third leg of the stool?
The third is orchestration. This is where you essentially lock in what works. It means eliminating discretion or unnecessary choice in the core operational processes.
Eliminating choice. That sounds a bit rigid.
It can sound that way. Gerber says discretion is the enemy of order, standardization, and quality. The idea is once you've innovated and quantified that something works best a certain way, that becomes the way.
Like the blue suit example. If the blue suit works for the sales team.
Then everyone on the sales team wears the blue suit. It removes variability and ensures a predictable, consistent standard.
So it's about creating reliable habits within the business system.
Exactly. Orchestration creates the habit of doing things the proven best way. And Gerber argues this actually removes the drudgery and boredom often found in small businesses because it creates a platform for continuous improvement, for personal growth within a defined structure.
So this whole process, innovation, quantification, orchestration, is how you build that franchise prototype.
Yes. It's about tuning your existing business or starting a new one with the goal of creating that perfectly organized model.
Yeah.
The book actually lays out a 7-step program for this, starting with some deeply personal work.
Right. Before you even design the business systems, you have to design your life. That's the first step, your primary aim.
Exactly. And this is so powerful because he insists your business is not the first order of business, your life is.
Okay.
You have to step back and ask yourself, what do I really want my life to look like? What do I value most? How do I want to feel each day? What kind of legacy do I want to leave? This personal vision is the foundation. The business has to be built to serve that aim.
So the business is a tool to achieve the life you want, not the other way around.
Precisely. And figuring out the primary aim helps you see what self-limiting beliefs, what curtains, as he puts it, might be holding you back.
Okay, so you define your primary aim, your life vision. What's the next step for the business itself?
Then you define your strategic objective. This is the vision for the finished business. It's a clear, ideally quantifiable statement of what the business will look like when it's done, meaning when it's successfully serving your primary aim.
So it connects the life goal to a business goal.
Yes. It defines the standards. What kind of business is it? How big will it be? What will the profits be? Who is the customer? For Sarah, the baker, maybe it meant envisioning a pie business doing, say, $1.8 million in sales with a 15% profit margin within 7 years. Something
What?
concrete.
A measurable target to shoot for. Okay. Primary aim, strategic objective, then comes the structure, your organizational strategy.
Right. And this is where you start building the prototype on paper. You organize around functions and responsibilities, not around the specific people you might have right now, or even yourself.
So you create an organization chart first, before hiring.
Exactly. You map out every single position needed for the business to achieve its strategic objective: COO, VP of Marketing, Sales Manager, Pie Production Supervisor, Counterstaff, whatever the roles are. You define what each position is accountable for, even if initially you're wearing multiple hats.
So you're building the structure independent of the people. How do you make sure those roles are performed correctly?
That's the position contract. It goes way beyond a typical job description. It's a written agreement for each position, outlining the specific results the position is expected to achieve and the standards by which those results will be measured.
A contract for results, not just tasks.
Yes, it creates clarity and accountability. The whole point is to build a system that produces predictable results, regardless of who is currently in that position. The system allows you to replace yourself, or anyone, without the business falling apart. The work defines the role, not the person in it.
Wow. Okay, that is a fundamentally different way of thinking about building a business. We've really covered a lot of ground here.
We certainly have, from that initial, often painful entrepreneurial seizure,
And falling into the technician's trap where your passion becomes a prison.
all the way to building a systemized, predictable business using the franchise prototype model.
It really is about designing a business that works for you so you can work on it strategically rather than just being perpetually stuck working in it.
Absolutely. The core message from the E-Myth Revisited is that you don't have to settle for chaos. You really can build an extraordinary business by applying these principles: innovation, quantification, orchestration.
Building something predictable, profitable, and, crucially, something that actually serves the life you want to live.
That's the goal.
So, to leave you, our listener, with something to chew on, if you really took this idea to heart, that your business must operate as if you were going to franchise it tomorrow, what would be the very first system, the very first process you need to document and perfect this week to start building that truly extraordinary business?